Hello, and welcome to the Warfighter Wire, your weekly roundup of the most critical news and developments from across the United States military and our allies. I'm your host, and we're coming to you on September 13th, 2025. This has been a truly momentous week, with a profound shift in strategic thinking here at home, landmark technological leaps, and a severe security crisis unfolding on NATO's eastern flank that has put the entire alliance on high alert. From a historic rebranding of the Pentagon to the launch of a new space architecture and a major Russian provocation in Europe, there's a lot to cover. So let's get right into it. The biggest story domestically this week is one of profound strategic realignment. The Trump administration has formalized a significant ideological and administrative shift in the nation's defense establishment. Via an executive order issued on September 5th, the United States Department of Defense will now officially be known as the Department of War. This directive applies to all official correspondence, public communications, and other non-statutory documents. Now, this is far more than just a name change. It signals a deliberate move away from a reactive defensive posture to a proactive wartime mindset. The goal is to physiologically prime the entire national security apparatus, from the industrial base to the American public, for an era of sustained great power competition and potential conflict. This rebranding provides a powerful justification for more aggressive policies and streamlined acquisition reforms that may bypass traditional oversight. The change isn't an isolated act. It's the capstone of a broader strategic realignment, creating the ideological framework for policies that might otherwise be seen as escalatory. By framing the department's mission around the concept of war, the administration aims to build a national consensus for a more muscular and proactive military posture globally. Accompanying this ideological shift is one of the most consequential policy developments for the defense industry in over a decade. On September 9th, the Department of War published the final rule for the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC 2.0 program. This rule, which becomes effective on November 10th, 2025, is designed to fundamentally restructure and secure the defense industrial base, a sector long seen as a prime target for cyber espionage by our adversaries. The CMMC 2.0 framework establishes a three-tiered system of verifiable cybersecurity standards. Level 1 applies to contractors who handle only Federal Contract Information, or FCI. They will be required to perform an annual self-assessment against 17 basic cyber hygiene controls. Level 2 is for contractors handling the more sensitive Controlled Unclassified Information, or CUI. This level aligns with the 110 security controls of NIST SP 800-171. Depending on the data sensitivity, companies will either need an annual self-assessment or a tri-annual third-party assessment from a certified CMMC third-party assessment organization known as a C3PAO. Level 3 is for companies handling the most sensitive CUI. This requires all Level 2 controls plus additional requirements from NIST SP 800-172 and will mandate a tri-annual assessment conducted by the DoW's own Defense Industrial Base Cybersecurity Assessment Center. Implementation will be phased in over the next 3 years, with full compliance mandated by November 10th, 2028. And make no mistake, this will have teeth. Once these requirements are in a contract solicitation, CMMC compliance will be a prerequisite for winning the award. Contracting officers will have to verify a company's CMMC status in the Supplier Performance Risk System, or SIPRS, before awarding any contract. This is expected to trigger a significant consolidation within the defense supply chain. Prime contractors will be on the hook to ensure their subs are compliant, making them aggressive gatekeepers. With the threat of breach of contract or even False Claims Act liability, primes will only want to work with certified subcontractors. The high cost of certification, especially for Level 2 and Level 3, will be a major barrier for small and medium-sized businesses, which could force them to exit the defense market entirely. While this will undoubtedly improve security, it may also lead to a less diverse and innovative industrial base in the long run. In a strange twist of timing, just as this monumental rule is being finalized, It was reported this week that the top cyber officials have departed the Defense Department. While some might see this as a mission accomplished moment, it's more likely an indicator of unresolved internal friction over the program's aggressive timeline or its potential economic impact. This creates a leadership vacuum at a critical time and introduces a significant execution risk for a program deemed essential to national security. Meanwhile, these domestic developments were overshadowed by a severe security crisis in Europe. On the night of September 9th and 10th, Poland was subjected to a large-scale sustained incursion of Russian drones, with between 19 and 23 drones entering its airspace from the direction of Belarus. The incursion lasted for over 7 hours, with some drones penetrating deep into Polish territory. Polish authorities later described them as unarmed decoy drones, suggesting the mission was a deliberate probe of NATO's air defense network and resolve. The response was immediate. NATO's integrated air defense system scrambled a multinational force of Polish F-16s, Dutch F-35s, an Italian AWACS plane, and a Belgian tanker. At least 8 of the drones were shot down, with the Dutch F-35s credited for most of the kills. In response to what is called an unprecedented case of attack, Poland formally invoked Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty, requesting emergency consultations with all NATO allies. NATO's response was swift and decisive. On September 12th, Secretary General Mark Rutte and Supreme Allied Commander Europe, U.S. General Alexis Granquich, announced that the launch of Operation Eastern Sentry. General Granquich described the new operation as a flexible and agile military activity designed to bolster the alliance's defensive posture along the entire eastern frontier, from the high north to the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. Secretary General Rutte called Russia's actions dangerous and unacceptable. This operation marks a significant strategic shift. The previous reactive air policing mission is no longer seen as sufficient. Eastern Sentry moves the alliance to a proactive, persistent, and integrated joint defense posture. The goal is to create a more complex and unpredictable defense environment for Russia, forcing Moscow to contend with a multi-layered system that is actively postured to engage threats, not just react to them. This is a game-changing event on NATO's eastern flank. We'll now turn to updates from across the service branches. The Air Force saw a critical milestone this week for its highest priority strategic program, the B-21 Raider stealth bomber. On September 11th, the Department of the Air Force announced that the second B-21 test aircraft has arrived at Edwards Air Force Base in California and has officially joined the flight test campaign. The addition of a second aircraft is a massive force multiplier for the program. It allows the Air Force to conduct parallel testing, which dramatically accelerates the path to an initial operation capability. According to the Air Force Chief of Staff General David Alvin, this will bring this capability to our warfighters faster. This parallel approach is crucial for a complex software-defined platform like the B-21. While the first jet continues to focus on flight sciences, pushing the envelope on speed, altitude, and maneuverability, the second aircraft can be dedicated to thousands of hours of testing required to validate its advanced mission systems. This includes its sensors, communication suites, electronic warfare systems, and, critically, weapons integration. This congruent activity could shave months or even years off the development timeline. Additionally, having 2 aircraft allows maintainers to begin developing sustainment procedures, providing invaluable early data for logistics and technical manuals to ensure the support infrastructure is ready when the B-21 arrives at its first main operating base at Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota. In other news, the service is increasing its presence in the Caribbean, deploying assets like the MQ-9 Reaper drones and F-35 fighters to bolster security in the nation's southern approaches. On the personnel front, the Air Force has launched a new initiative to transform its maintenance career fields, seeking input from airmen and the public on how to better retain the highly skilled technicians needed for its increasingly complex fleet. It was a landmark week for the U.S. Space Force and the Space Development Agency, or SDA, marking the operational beginning of a new era in military space. On September 10th, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket successfully launched from Vandenberg Space Force Base, carrying the first 21 satellites of the Tranche 1 transport layer for the Proliferated Warfighter Space Architecture, or PWSA. These 21 satellites are the first operational data transport vehicles of the PWSA. They are now the leading edge of a planned constellation of 154 Tranche 1 satellites that will provide resilient, low-latency technical communications and missile tracking from low Earth orbit. To build out this network, the SDA is planning an aggressive launch cadence of about 1 launch per month for the next 9 months. This represents a fundamental paradigm shift. The PWSA's proliferated model moves away from the old way of doing things, relying on a few expensive and vulnerable satellites in high orbits. Instead, it uses a large mesh network of smaller, cheaper satellites in low Earth orbit. This disaggregated architecture is specifically designed to be resilient. The loss of one or even several satellites will not cripple the network. This forces an adversary into a difficult and costly position. They would have to destroy our satellites faster than we can replenish them, a challenge made even harder by the SDA's use of rapid commercial launch services. This makes our space enterprise far more survivable in a contested environment. There were also 2 major leadership and basing announcements for the Space Force this week. President Trump announced that the permanent headquarters of the U.S. Space Command will be relocated to Huntsville, Alabama, ending a long and politically charged debate. And at the SDA, Director Derek Turner, who has led the agency since its inception, is departing. Dr. Gurpratap Sandhu has been named as the acting director, taking over at a pivotal moment as the agency moves from demonstration to full-scale operational deployment of the PWSA. The Army's transformation for large-scale combat operations took a major step forward this week with the new Mobile Brigade Combat Teams, or MBCTs. A force design update for the new MBCTs is now circulating, with leadership emphasizing the need for flexibility. In a concrete example for this new total force approach, the Washington Army National Guard's 81st Stryker Brigade Combat Team has been selected to convert into one of the new Mobile Brigades. The MBCT concept is the most significant restructuring of Army combat formations in over 40 years. These brigades are designed to be lighter, more mobile, and more lethal, with the organic capability to control the entire kill chain. They will be outfitted with new tech, including the infantry squad vehicle for rapid mobility and a variety of unmanned aircraft systems for sensing and striking, and a new resilient tactical network. This integration allows the MBCT to break free from the traditionally slow 72-hour air tasking order cycle, enabling a much more dynamic and adaptive targeting process. Complementing this transformation, the Army is also on the verge of fielding a new class of unmanned systems called Launched Effects. Following a successful 3-week user demonstration with soldiers at Joint Base Lewis McChord, the service is now preparing to field these short-range systems across the force within the next year. Launched Effects are small, attributable drones that can be launched from air or ground platforms to perform reconnaissance, electronic warfare, or lethal strikes. They are the cornerstone of the Army's multi-domain operations concept, designed to create a distributed and resilient network of sensors and shooters. This signals an urgent pivot in Army doctrine, building a layered force of unmanned systems to serve as the tip of the spear in a peer conflict. The idea is to use mass drones to find, fix, and attrit enemy forces before ever committing manned platforms and soldiers, thereby reducing risk. However, this new paradigm creates an immense new challenges in command and control, requiring unprecedented network bandwidth and AI-enabled systems to avoid overwhelming commanders with data. Finally, demonstrating its focus in the Indo-Pacific, the Army conducted joint beach landing exercises with the U.S. Marines in Hawaii on September 11th, honing critical amphibious assault skills. We'll start our naval coverage with a tense incident that unfolded at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. On the afternoon of September 11th, the campus was placed on lockdown to what was described as a report of threats. An active shooter alert was triggered by what was later determined to be a false report, originating from a post on an anonymous chat platform. The post was traced to a computer belonging to a former midshipman who was confirmed to be in another part of the country at the time. As security forces were clearing buildings, a tragic case of mistaken identity occurred in a massive Bancorft Hall dormitory. A midshipman, who was reportedly armed with a parade rifle used for training, confronted a responding law enforcement officer, mistaking him for a threat and striking him. The officer then fired on the midshipman, striking him in the shoulder or arm. The injured midshipman was medically evacuated by helicopter to a local hospital in stable condition. The Naval Security Force member was treated for minor injuries. Both were released from the hospital the next day. The lockdown was lifted after midnight, and the Naval Criminal Investigative Service is now conducting a full investigation into the entire incident. In the Indo-Pacific, the Navy's 7th Fleet continued to strengthen alliances, conducting bilateral operations with the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force in the Philippine Sea from September 4th to 5th. This exercise involved the destroyer USS Higgins, the Japanese helicopter destroyer JS Ise, and the destroyer JS Suzunami. The drills followed the conclusion of the larger multilateral exercise Pacific Vanguard 2025, which also included forces from Australia, New Zealand, and the Republic of Korea, all part of the U.S. strategy to maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific. On the modernization front, the Navy published a request for proposals for its next-generation logistics ship, a platform essential for sustaining distributed maritime operations. And in the industrial base, HII's Ingalls Shipbuilding announced it is expanding its outsourcing work for the R. Lake Burke-class destroyer program to increase production capacity. Finally, the Navy held a change in command ceremony on September 8th for the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, marking a new era of leadership for the enlisted force. Now turning to the Marine Corps. The Corps is taking deliberate steps to accelerate the integration of small unmanned aerial systems, or SUAS. Throughout August and September, the Corps has hosted drone task force summits to chart a path for using small drones for both surveillance and lethal attack missions. This initiative leverages years of works from elite units like MARSOC and the Experimental Infantry Battalion Experiment, aligning directly with Force Design 2030 concept of equipping small expeditionary units with their own organic ISR and strike capabilities. Recognizing the growing threat from enemy drones, the Marine Corps is also looking to bolster its air defense. This week, the service issued a request for information for new advanced radar systems to be paired with its Mobile Marine Air Defense Integrated Systems, or MADIS, platforms. This indicates a clear operational need to improve the ability of Marine expeditionary units to detect and track aerial threats in contested environments. And now for a look at the future, with updates from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. On September 8th, DARPA announced a new program that aims to revolutionize battlefield medicine. The program will focus on developing sensor-guided robots capable of autonomously locating and stopping severe, life-threatening hemorrhage in a wounded soldier's torso, with only limited human assistance. This is a critical capability for future conflicts where rapid medical evacuations may be impossible. Automating these life-saving interventions at the point of injury could be a revolutionary advance in combat casualty care. The agency is also heavily invested in automating cybersecurity. On September 11th, DARPA held a virtual Proposers Day for its Resilient Software Systems Accelerator program, which leads to create tools for building highly resistant software. This follows the recent DARPA AI Cyber Challenge, where the winning team showcased AI tools that could autonomously find and fix software vulnerabilities at high speed and scale impossible for humans. Together, these programs represent a major push to create software systems that can defend themselves and self-heal from cyber attacks. Finally, let's look at where the Department of War is putting its money. The major contract awards this week highlights a clear strategic focus on unmanned systems, advanced munitions, global IT infrastructure, and fortifying key overseas bases. Several trends are clear. First, the heavy investment in unmanned systems and advanced munition continues. This is evidenced by a massive $14.1 billion ceiling on IDIQ contract awarded to General Atomics to support the MQ-9 Reaper drone enterprise for foreign military sales customers. We also saw a $760 million IDIQ for Raytheon for production and support of the essential AMRAAM missile, and an undisclosed contract to Boeing and Applied Research Associates to design the next-generation bunker buster bomb. Second, the massive and ongoing need to modernize IT and network infrastructure was on full display with the award of the $10 billion Information Technology Enterprise Solutions for Hardware, or ITES-4H, contract vehicle to 49 companies including CACI and Dell. Third, the strategic importance of global basing was highlighted by a $1.5 billion combined IDIQ contract for the 5 construction firms for the work at the Navy Support Facility on Diego Garcia in the Indo-Pacific. And finally, looking ahead, the Missile Defense Agency released its request for proposal for the Scalable Homeland Innovative Enterprise Layered Defense, or SHIELD IDIQ vehicle, With a staggering ceiling of $151 billion, it signals a monumental future investment in developing a comprehensive layered missile defense system. That is all the time we have for this week. It has been a week of profound change and rising tensions, from the halls of the newly named Department of War to the skies over Poland. The strategic shifts we are seeing now will have consequences for years to come, and we'll be here to track them every step of the way. Thank you for watching the Warfighter Wire. I'm your host, and please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you.